The voice of the Atlantic Coast Conference, the reason the ACC turns a profit. He is the one and only Wes Durham, who had Notre Dame hosting SMU last night, which, as it turned out, the symmetry of Wednesday night ACC basketball was both games ended 97-73. How did you work that out?
I don't know. You're the one with the sports book in North Carolina. Maybe you can tell me.
That is, we don't have one in Georgia?
No, sir, we do not.
Really? Interesting.
Nope.
It's probably for the better. Who knows? It just gets.
I don't know. I hear there's some revenues in the state that they didn't have a few years ago. They now have, so good for North Carolina.
That is true. It has certainly been pretty profitable for the state so far. What do you make of, like, we're going to get to North Carolina, NC State, because I know you didn't see the game, so it's a little bit more difficult to dig into the details of it.
I watched the replay. I watched the replay this morning, so I'm
okay. So we will get to that in a second.
I'm versed to at least get to it at about 5,000 feet. Let's put it that way.
What's going on at Notre Dame with Micah Shrewsbury? The end of the Mike Brey era, it kind of fizzled out. We all understood it was going to go away.
Sure.
That run for 5 or so years was awesome when Notre Dame came into the ACC. Some deep NCAA tournament runs, an ACC championship, all of that. Right. The league mattered to Mike Brey.
Sure.
Is there still confidence that Shrewsbury's the guy to turn it around?
I think so. I think what Notre Dame's going through is exactly what some other schools have gone through, though, Adam. I mean, it's not easy now. I mean, this guy's in year 2, and let's be honest, it kind of bottomed out a little bit for Mike Brey at the end. I think we can all agree with that. His last Notre Dame team, probably his last 2, were not great teams. And when in today's world, when it bottoms out like that, it's tough, especially at Notre Dame, where they do have some guardrails in place. Some other schools don't. So you can't go in there and flip rosters as fast as you can at other places. You got to be a little more prudent with your transfer offers, and you got to be a little more prudent in your grad game, and then your player development piece still matters. And meanwhile, the rest of the country, to a certain respect, is pouring cash into people's pockets, and you're still trying to figure out how you're going to do that, right? You haven't quite maybe turn those lights all the way on at your house yet. So Notre Dame, I think, is there. I think next year will be, let's take, for instance, and I know, boy, is this a hell of a risk in today's college basketball. Let's say that Marcus Burton and Keba Jai and Tay Davis all come back next year, right?
Okay.
With Braden Shrewsbury, obviously Micah's son, who's a talented shooting guard. And with their recruiting class, I'd like to tell you I think they're going to be better. Harrelson is a terrific point guard. Burton can move to the off-guard spot. Shrewsbury would be a small 3, but nonetheless a 3. I like Davis. I like Keba Jai if he continues to develop, but I also like the idea of adding a portal big, and Notre Dame is all of a sudden a little bit better than they are, as a core now. So I see a path there. That path, though, involves getting a big in the portal. Well, guess what the biggest commodity in the transfer portal is going to be next year in college basketball? A big. Just like quarterbacks and offensive and defensive linemen in football, right? They're the most on-demand pieces of the operation. So Notre Dame is in a get-in-line spot with several other schools who are going to want that big. So that therefore you got to bank a little bit more that Keba Jai is going to be better than he's been, certainly in the last couple of weeks.
Hey, look, if Duke had gotten a big out of the portal last year, might have been a lot different for John Shire and company then, but it wasn't. They were basically left with Kyle Filipowski on his own. And Earl is a big fan of getting bigs out of the transfer portal. UNC couldn't get a transfer portal big last year.
That's right.
Ben Allen Lubin is a guy that's kind of masquerading as their 5. All right, so from 5,000 feet, what were your thoughts on last night at the Smith Center?
Number one, NC State I didn't think was fair. I didn't think they were very crisp at all offensively. I think Carolina was better defensively than they've been recently. And somebody else beside R.J. Davis was scoring with them last night.
Yeah.
It's not real difficult when you start looking at where Carolina is good and where Carolina struggles. There are 2 or 3 principles. One, are they being somewhat a defensive basketball team? You know, and if they're very good on defense, they're going to put themselves in a chance to win. Much like I keep using the Florida game from December as the example. They played pretty good defense that night. They lost to a better team, right?
Yeah.
I think that, you know, they had 2 or 3 scores that night. They lost to a better team. They're going to be a competitive basketball team if they're willing defenders. And last night I thought they were. I thought NC State was sloppy with the basketball at times. I thought R.J. Davis had help in scoring. Certainly, I thought Van Lubin, speak of him, was somebody that got around the basket and made plays. They were really good on the glass last night. Against a team that, by the way, can be good on the glass. NC State's not a terrible rebounding team, but, you know, Carolina was, as I like to say in today's college basketball, we can say this now. Carolina was interested last night, right?
Yep.
They were. Looked like they wanted to be good, and by God, they were good. Now, the question is, can they be good when Virginia rolls in there Saturday at 4 o'clock? Because that's going to be an important game for Carolina. Carolina, based on where this is, Adam, Carolina really can't have a misstep here going down the stretch if they even want to have a remote chance of scratching into the NCAA tournament field. And I still think they've got a couple curves and maybe a steep climb following, you know, last night to it'll still even have that kind of optimistic conversation when we get to Charlotte.
I 100% agree. We had Jerry Palm on earlier this week. My feeling is that even if they lose to Duke, if they win 6 more games, then I think there's a reasonable chance that we'll see them at least in the first 4. Wes Durham is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show.
2 in Charlotte and the rest 4, the other 4 besides Duke.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and if they can do that, I think they'll put themselves in position. I don't think it guarantees anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it gives them a chance. I don't anticipate them beating Duke unless Duke doesn't want to win the game. And I know it's kind of weird to say it that way, but if Duke is locked in, I just don't think Carolina can touch him. But I think
I would agree with you on this. When Duke is playing well, like they did the other night in Charlottesville, they're one of the 3, 4, 5 best teams in the country. That's just fact where that is. SEC's having a great year. No disrespect to them. Duke is one of the 5 best teams in the country when they play like they
no
play
question. With the 2 teams from Alabama, Florida, maybe Houston right now, the way Houston is playing.
That would be the way I would look at it. Only because I think Kelvin Sampson's team has been there, and I think if they're one of the teams I want to look at their bracket when it comes out, because I think Houston's that we're all kind of sleeping on. We're easily distracted by how bad Kansas has been right now, things like that, when we're really not paying attention to the central story in the Big 12, in my opinion.
All right, before I let you go, Wes Durham, the voice of the ACC, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. With all of the stuff coming out about meetings and expanded college football playoff, if Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner, called you and asked, Wes, what should I do here? What should I say? What would you tell him?
Well, you got to tell me what the deal is that's on the table and what the money is on the table. But if you're telling me that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to have controlling interest of this operation, I want to know, number one, for how long? Like, what's the term? Does that get you to 31? Does that get you to 2032? What's the term of the deal, right?
Right.
The second thing is this. If there is this football investment across the board in the ACC and the coaching is better, what happens the year you've got 3 or 4 teams that can be digging in on this? And by the way, what's the answer from the Southeastern Conference when the cannibalistic approach that happened this year, where they thought July 1, I remember on an A block of Get Up, I was told the opening day of SEC Media Day, that wasn't July 1. It was an A block story or B block story on that edition of Get Up that day, where we went live to Dallas for the SEC event, the kickoff, the labor meeting they have with 4,000 people there.
Exactly.
where I remember a certain ESPN college football insider told me they were going to get 5 teams in the college football playoff. So in July, if I'm being told they're going to get 5 in the playoff, what happens if another year like this repeats itself where they deserve no more than 3? Are we just going to throw the 4th team log on the fire because they play in the league?
Well, that's what the plan is. Oh, I totally see that. That's where I depart. What I don't understand is for a league that says, and they're probably right. Not even probably, they're right. They have, especially over the last 15 or so years, for a league that has played the best football. Mm-hmm. Why are they looking for guarantees? Just let your football do the talking.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that's, and I get it. I understand where this is going. They have the television numbers to back it up. They certainly have the financials to back it up. But when you don't have the quality product to match, and why are we still having a committee if we have all this, by the way?
We won't need one. I guess that's also their point, to get rid of the committee.
Yeah, the committee's going to become, just a, kind of a showpiece on the Cadillac. They're going to be the hood ornament, right? But for me, I have some questions about what happens when your league can't deliver, and when the ACC or the Big 12, which, by the way, the Big 12 in the first year and 2 years potentially could have 3 or 4 teams, and what happens to those back 2? So I guess I'm looking at the slots here. And if your league is going to be good, and you think your league's going to be good, why do you think you need the slots?
Exactly.
But they are in a position where, and I'd like to know a little bit more what Ross Dellinger wrote about. I'd like to know a little bit more about the signed memo of understanding from a year ago and how that conversation came about. We seem to be just kind of skipping over the top of, kind of that part and on into, the formation of this. The last thing I'll say to you is this. My urge to him would be, above all else, get this event away from its NCAA basketball tournament tendencies immediately. Get this event to be its own standalone event. Move on. Let's move away from conflicts with the National Football League. Let's also get the college football calendar fixed before we start staging 14 and 16 team playoffs.
Yeah, the calendar is going to be interesting because when they expand the playoffs, where those games are going to go right up against NFL football games, and they don't want that. We're going to end up playing.
And you know how your winter calendar works because of the Canes, right?
Sure.
Nobody wants to talk about backing college football up into August, or that by the time this current CFP contract ends, the NFL could be playing 18 games in 20 weeks.
Oh, yeah. That's going to happen.
That conversation is not even starting. And I'll end with this. For all the television goodness that has been preached in the college football playoff, just remember this, that the national championship game between 2 major brands, Adam, in this country did not get 30 million people to watch. Okay? The AFC Championship game had 52.5 million people watch it, let alone the Super Bowl, whose full number is close to 128 million 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
So that has to also, I think, find its way into part of the equation of this future of college football for sure.
Wes Durham, always a gentleman. Where are you headed this weekend?
This little game in Dallas, Texas. My first trip to Moody Coliseum, and I'm pretty excited about it, to be honest with you, for SMU and Clemson on Saturday at 4 o'clock. The tall Virginian and I will take a sail with the pilot-type flavor to the broadcast for the folks in Big D on Saturday.
Unbelievable. All right, sir. I appreciate your time, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, AG. Take care.